Question 1. System analysis indicates that a new business-critical application needs to be deployed to 500 virtual desktops within a VMware Horizon 7 environment. The deployment must be completed within a tight timeframe to meet business objectives, and the IT team needs to ensure minimal disruption to end users and maintain a consistent application experience across all desktops. The current VDI environment utilizes linked clones for persistent desktops. Which of the following approaches represents the most efficient and best practice method for deploying this application? Option A. Manually install the application on each of the 500 virtual desktops. Option B. Utilize VMware app volumes to create an application package and attach it dynamically to the relevant user groups. Option C. Deploy the application using a scheduled task that runs on each virtual desktop at a specific time. Option D. Create a new master image with the application pre-installed and recompose all linked clone desktops. Correct answer is B. Utilize VMware app volumes to create an application package and attach it dynamically to the relevant user groups. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI, environments, balancing user experience with resource utilization and security. The need to deploy a new application across a large user base while minimizing disruption and ensuring compliance with potential data handling regulations. Though not explicitly stated, it's an implicit consideration in professional practice, requires careful planning. The challenge lies in selecting a deployment method that is efficient, scalable, and does not negatively impact the performance or security posture of the VDI environment. Professional judgment is required to weigh the trade-offs between speed, impact, and long-term manageability. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging VMware Horizon's application publishing capabilities, specifically through app volumes. This method is considered best professional practice because it allows for the dynamic delivery of applications to users without requiring a full desktop image rebuild or reprovisioning. App Volumes attaches application packages to users or groups, providing a seamless user experience and significantly reducing deployment and management overhead. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, this approach supports compliance by allowing for granular control over application access and updates, which is crucial for maintaining data integrity and security. It also aligns with principles of least privilege and efficient resource management, which are often implicitly or explicitly required by IT governance frameworks. Incorrect approach is analysis. Manually installing the application on each individual virtual desktop image is professionally unacceptable due to its inefficiency and high risk of human error. This approach is not scalable for a large user base and would lead to inconsistent configurations, making troubleshooting and compliance auditing extremely difficult. It violates best practices for centralized management and would likely contravene any IT policies requiring standardized deployments and audit trails. Creating a new master image with the application pre-installed and then recomposing all linked clones or instant clones is also a less optimal approach. While more centralized than manual installation, it still requires a full recomposition, which can be disruptive to users and consume significant system resources. This method is less agile than application publishing and can lead to downtime during the recomposition process. It also increases the complexity of image management, as each application update would necessitate a new master image. Deploying the application via a scheduled task on each virtual desktop is a technically feasible but professionally unsound method for application deployment in a VDI environment. This approach bypasses established VDI management tools and introduces significant risks. It lacks granular control over application delivery, update management, and rollback capabilities. Furthermore, it makes auditing and compliance verification extremely challenging, as the deployment mechanism is not integrated with the VDI management platform. This could lead to security vulnerabilities if not meticulously managed, and would likely be considered a deviation from standard operating procedures in a regulated environment. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach application deployment in VDI by first understanding the specific requirements of the application and the user base. They should then evaluate available VDI management tools and features, prioritizing solutions that offer centralized control, scalability, and minimal user disruption. A thorough assessment of the impact on system performance, security, and ongoing manageability is crucial. Decision-making should be guided by established IT best practices, vendor recommendations in this case, VMware's, and any relevant organizational policies or regulatory mandates. The goal is to select the most efficient, secure, and maintainable solution. Question 2. Risk assessment procedures indicate a critical security vulnerability has been identified within the VMware Horizon View Agent software, requiring an immediate patch. Considering the potential impact on end-user access and overall system stability, which of the following approaches best mitigates risk while ensuring timely remediation? Option A. Deploy the security patch to all production virtual desktops simultaneously to ensure immediate protection. Option B. Delay patching production virtual desktops until a future, larger update that includes this security fix is available to minimize the number of individual patch deployments. Option C. Apply the patch only to non-production virtual desktop pools and postpone patching production systems until a more comprehensive update is released. Option D. Implement a phased rollout of the security patch, beginning with a small pilot group of users and gradually expanding to the entire production environment after successful validation. The correct answer is A. Deploy the security patch to all production virtual desktops simultaneously to ensure immediate protection. Explanation: Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in virtual desktop infrastructure (VDI) management where a critical security vulnerability is discovered. A professional must balance the immediate need for security remediation with the potential disruption to end users and the operational stability of the environment. The challenge lies in selecting a patching strategy that minimizes risk to both security and business continuity, requiring a thorough understanding of the VDI lifecycle and VMware's best practices for patching. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a phased rollout of the security patch, starting with a pilot group and progressing to broader deployment after successful validation, represents best professional practice. This approach aligns with VMware's recommended patching methodologies for Horizon environments. It allows for early detection of compatibility issues or unforeseen side effects of the patch within a controlled subset of the user base. This minimizes the impact of any potential problems on the entire organization, ensuring that critical business operations are not jeopardized. This methodical approach also supports the principle of least privilege and defense in depth by addressing the vulnerability promptly while maintaining operational integrity. Incorrect approach is analysis. Immediately applying the patch to all production virtual desktops without prior testing introduces significant risk. This approach disregards the potential for the patch to cause instability, application conflicts, or performance degradation in the production environment, which could lead to widespread service disruption and impact business operations. This failure to validate the patch in a controlled manner is a direct contravention of prudent IT change management practices and VMware's guidance on maintaining a stable VDI environment. Deploying the patch only to non-production environments, such as development or testing pools, while leaving production vulnerable, is also an inadequate response. While testing is crucial, delaying the application of a critical security patch to production systems leaves the organization exposed to known threats. This creates an unacceptable security risk and fails to meet the organization's obligation to protect its data and systems from exploitation. Waiting for a future, larger update that includes the security patch without an interim solution is another flawed approach. Critical security vulnerabilities require timely remediation. Relying on a future update, which may be weeks or months away, leaves the environment exposed to active threats for an extended period. This demonstrates a lack of urgency in addressing critical security risks and a failure to adhere to proactive security management principles. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to patching. This involves understanding the severity of the vulnerability, the potential impact of exploitation, and the potential impact of the patch itself. A structured change management process, including thorough testing in a representative non-production environment, followed by a phased rollout to production, is essential. This iterative process allows for continuous monitoring and validation, ensuring that security is enhanced without compromising operational stability. Question 3. Quality control measures reveal that the current process for deploying new virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI, images is slow and prone to configuration errors, leading to user dissatisfaction and potential security vulnerabilities. The IT team needs to optimize this deployment process to ensure faster delivery of stable and secure desktop environments. Which of the following approaches best addresses this challenge while adhering to professional standards for VDI deployment? Option A. Implement a phased deployment strategy with automated testing and validation at each stage, including security and compliance checks before proceeding to the next phase. Option B. Accelerate the deployment timeline by skipping intermediate testing phases and relying on post-deployment troubleshooting to address any issues that arise. Option C. Focus solely on optimizing the speed of image transfer and provisioning, assuming that security and compliance can be addressed through separate, later initiatives. Option D. Transition to a completely manual deployment process to allow for more granular, individual oversight of each desktop's configuration. The correct answer is A. Implement a phased deployment strategy with automated testing and validation at each stage, including security and compliance checks before proceeding to the next phase. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in IT environments, balancing the need for rapid deployment of new virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI solutions, with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance. The professional's task is to identify the most effective approach to optimize the process of deploying these desktops, while adhering to the stringent requirements of the VMware Certified Professional 7 Desktop and Mobility Exams implied regulatory framework, which, for the purpose of this exam, we will assume aligns with general best practices for data protection and system integrity, as commonly understood in professional IT contexts, without referencing specific external jurisdictions. The correct approach emphasizes a phased, iterative deployment strategy that incorporates automated testing and validation at each stage. This method allows for early detection of issues, minimizes the risk of widespread disruption, and ensures that security and compliance checks are integrated from the outset, not as an afterthought. This aligns with professional best practices by promoting a risk-aware and quality-driven deployment lifecycle. It is professionally sound because it proactively addresses potential vulnerabilities and ensures that the deployed VDI environment meets defined performance, security, and usability standards before full rollout. This minimizes the likelihood of security breaches, data loss, or non-compliance with internal policies or industry standards. An incorrect approach that bypasses thorough testing and validation in favor of speed would be professionally unacceptable. This failure to test adequately could lead to the deployment of insecure configurations, unpatched vulnerabilities, or systems that do not meet performance requirements, thereby exposing the organization to significant security risks and potential non-compliance. Another incorrect approach, such as relying solely on manual checks for a large-scale deployment, is inefficient and prone to human error, increasing the risk of oversights that could compromise security or compliance. This is professionally deficient because it fails to leverage available automation and best practices for scalability and accuracy. A third incorrect approach, focusing exclusively on performance metrics without considering security or compliance, is also professionally unsound. This narrow focus neglects critical aspects of a secure and compliant VDI deployment, potentially leading to regulatory violations or data breaches. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes a holistic view of the deployment process. This involves understanding the business objectives, identifying all relevant technical and non-technical requirements, including security, compliance, and user experience, and selecting a deployment methodology that systematically addresses these requirements. The process should be iterative, with clear checkpoints for testing, validation, and stakeholder feedback. Automation should be leveraged wherever possible to ensure consistency, efficiency, and accuracy. Question 4. Governance review demonstrates that the planned deployment of a new VMware Horizon 8 environment for 500 users has identified several critical security configuration gaps, including missing endpoint security hardening, unpatched operating system images, and inadequate network segmentation for the VDI infrastructure. The project timeline is aggressive, with business units expecting access within 2 weeks. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Halt the VDI deployment entirely until all identified security gaps are fully remediated, even if it significantly delays the project timeline. Option B. Implement a baseline security configuration for the VDI environment, prioritizing critical controls such as endpoint hardening and network segmentation, and establish a documented plan with clear timelines for addressing the remaining identified gaps post-deployment. Option C. Deploy the VDI environment with the identified security gaps, but create a general task to review and potentially fix them at some point in the future. Option D. Proceed with the full VDI deployment as planned, as the business units require immediate access, and address all identified security gaps after the environment is operational. The correct answer is B. Implement a baseline security configuration for the VDI environment, prioritizing critical controls such as endpoint hardening and network segmentation, and establish a documented plan with clear timelines for addressing the remaining identified gaps post-deployment. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise IT environments, balancing the need for rapid deployment of new virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI, with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance. The pressure to deliver a functional environment quickly can lead to shortcuts that, while seemingly efficient in the short term, introduce significant risks. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating these risks without unduly delaying critical business initiatives. The governance review highlights a potential gap between operational expediency and established security policies, requiring a nuanced approach to remediation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased remediation strategy that prioritizes critical security controls while enabling the VDI deployment to proceed with appropriate safeguards. This aligns with best practices for risk management and compliance. Specifically, implementing a baseline security configuration and then iteratively addressing the identified gaps ensures that the VDI environment is secure from the outset. This approach demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to maintaining a secure posture, which is a fundamental expectation under general IT governance principles, and often mandated by internal security policies and potentially industry-specific regulations. Though no specific jurisdiction is provided, general principles apply. It allows for a controlled and documented process of risk acceptance and mitigation. Incorrect approach is analysis. Proceeding with the full deployment without addressing any of the identified security gaps represents a direct violation of governance policies and a failure to adhere to risk management principles. This approach creates an unacceptable security posture, exposing the organization to potential data breaches, compliance violations, and reputational damage. Demonstrates a disregard for established security protocols and a prioritization of speed over security, which is professionally irresponsible. Implementing a fix-it-later mentality for all identified gaps without a clear plan or timeline is also problematic. While it acknowledges the issues, it lacks the structured approach necessary for effective risk management. This can lead to critical vulnerabilities being overlooked or indefinitely postponed, creating a false sense of security. It fails to demonstrate proactive risk mitigation and can be seen as a form of willful negligence if significant issues remain unaddressed. Ignoring the governance review findings entirely and proceeding with the deployment as planned is the most egregious failure. This demonstrates a complete disregard for established policies, risk management frameworks, and potentially legal or regulatory obligations. It signals a breakdown in organizational control and a lack of accountability, leading to severe security and compliance risks. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should employ a structured risk-based decision-making process. This involves 1. Understanding the scope and severity of the identified risks. 2. Consulting relevant governance policies, security standards, and compliance requirements. 3. Engaging with stakeholders, security, operations, business units, to assess the impact of the risks and potential remediation strategies. 4. Developing a prioritized remediation plan that balances security needs with business objectives. 5. Documenting all decisions, risk acceptances, and mitigation efforts. 6. Establishing clear timelines and responsibilities for remediation activities. 7. Regularly reviewing and updating the security posture as the VDI environment evolves. Question 5. Operational review demonstrates that the organization requires a scalable and efficient virtual desktop solution to replace aging physical desktops. The IT team has selected VMware Horizon with instant clones for rapid provisioning. However, concerns have been raised regarding the security implications of ephemeral desktops and ensuring compliance with data privacy regulations during the deployment and ongoing management of this new infrastructure. What is the most professional and compliant approach to implementing VMware Horizon Instant Clones? Option A. Immediately deploy Horizon Instant Clones to all users to meet the urgent business need for updated desktops, relying on default security settings. Option B. Implement a phased rollout of Horizon Instant Clones, beginning with a pilot group of users with enhanced security monitoring and access controls, followed by a gradual expansion after successful validation. Option C. Postpone the deployment of Horizon Instant Clones indefinitely until a comprehensive, fully documented security and compliance framework for ephemeral desktops can be finalized. Option D. Deploy Horizon Full Clones for all users as a more secure alternative to instant clones, despite the increased management overhead. Correct answer is B. Implement a phased rollout of Horizon Instant Clones, beginning with a pilot group of users with enhanced security monitoring and access controls, followed by a gradual expansion after successful validation. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for user access with the long-term security and compliance posture of the organization. The implementation of a new virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI, solution, specifically VMware Horizon, introduces potential vulnerabilities if not configured and managed according to established best practices and regulatory requirements. The challenge lies in ensuring that the chosen deployment strategy not only meets performance and user experience goals, but also adheres to the strict data protection and privacy mandates relevant to the exam's jurisdiction. The correct approach involves a phased rollout of Horizon Instant Clones, prioritizing a pilot group with comprehensive security controls and user training. This represents best professional practice because it allows for controlled testing and validation of security configurations, access policies, and user acceptance before a wider deployment. By isolating the pilot group, any unforeseen issues can be contained, minimizing the risk of widespread data exposure or service disruption. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, ensuring that sensitive data remains protected throughout the deployment lifecycle. Furthermore, it allows for the collection of performance metrics and user feedback to refine the configuration, ensuring compliance with any applicable data handling regulations by proactively addressing potential compliance gaps. An incorrect approach would be to immediately deploy Horizon Instant Clones to all users without a pilot phase. This is professionally unacceptable due to significant regulatory and ethical failures. It bypasses critical security validation steps, potentially exposing sensitive data to unauthorized access or accidental disclosure, which would violate data protection laws. It also fails to adequately assess the impact on user workflows and compliance requirements, increasing the risk of non-compliance with data residency or processing regulations. Another incorrect approach would be to deploy Horizon Full Clones for all users as a default. While full clones offer more customization, they are less efficient for large-scale deployments and can introduce management overhead that indirectly impacts security if not properly managed. The failure here is not necessarily a direct regulatory breach, but a suboptimal choice that increases the attack surface and management complexity, making it harder to maintain a secure and compliant environment. This approach neglects the efficiency benefits of instant clones, which, when properly secured, offer a more robust and manageable solution for rapid deployment and decommissioning, thereby enhancing overall security posture. A third incorrect approach would be to delay the deployment entirely until all potential security features and compliance requirements are exhaustively documented and implemented, even for basic functionality. While thoroughness is important, an indefinite delay without a clear path to deployment is professionally unsound. It fails to meet the business need for updated desktop solutions and can lead to the use of outdated, potentially less secure legacy systems. This approach demonstrates a lack of risk management and an inability to balance security with operational requirements, potentially leading to a situation where the organization is forced to adopt insecure workarounds. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a risk-based approach. First, identify the core business requirement and the technical solution. Second, assess the potential security and compliance risks associated with the chosen technology and deployment strategy. Third, evaluate different deployment methodologies, e.g., pilot groups, phased rollouts, different cloning technologies against these risks, considering efficiency, security, and user impact. Fourth, consult relevant regulatory frameworks and internal policies to ensure all requirements are met. Finally, select the approach that best balances operational needs with security and compliance obligations, prioritizing controlled testing and validation. Question 6. Quality control measures reveal that user environment management profile redirection is intermittently failing for users accessing virtual desktops running Windows 10 and Windows 11 from a mixed fleet of physical endpoints. The UEM solution is configured to redirect user profiles to a central network share. What is the most appropriate initial troubleshooting approach to address this implementation challenge? Option A. Verify the health and configuration of the UEM agent on affected endpoints. Review UEM server-side policies for profile redirection, and confirm network connectivity and permissions to the central profile share. Option B. Modify endpoint security policies and network share permissions to forcibly enable profile redirection without further investigation. Option C. Focus solely on reinstalling the UEM agent on all affected physical endpoints, assuming a client-side issue. Option D. Immediately disable UEM profile redirection for all affected users to restore functionality, and address the security implications later. Correct answer is A. Verify the health and configuration of the UEM agent on affected endpoints, review UEM server-side policies for profile redirection, and confirm network connectivity and permissions to the central profile share. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge where a critical security control, user environment management, profile redirection, is not functioning as intended across a mixed operating system environment. The challenge lies in balancing user productivity and access with the imperative to maintain a secure and consistent desktop environment, especially when dealing with sensitive data. The professional must diagnose the root cause without introducing further security vulnerabilities or disrupting business operations. The complexity arises from potential interactions between different OS versions, UEM configurations, and underlying network infrastructure. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, layered investigation that prioritizes security and compliance. This means starting with the most likely and least intrusive causes, such as verifying UEM agent health and configuration on the affected endpoints. It then progresses to examining the UEM server-side settings, ensuring profile redirection policies are correctly applied and not conflicting with other GPOs or security software. Finally, it involves testing network connectivity and permissions relevant to profile storage locations. This methodical approach aligns with best practices for IT service management and security, ensuring that any remediation steps are documented, tested, and do not inadvertently weaken the security posture. Adherence to established ITIL principles for incident management and problem resolution is paramount. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to immediately disable UEM profile redirection for all affected users to restore functionality. This is a regulatory and ethical failure because it bypasses a critical security control designed to protect sensitive user data and maintain configuration consistency. Disabling such a feature without proper authorization, risk assessment, and compensating controls constitutes a significant security lapse and a violation of data protection principles. Another incorrect approach would be to focus solely on the end-user devices and reinstalling the UEM agent without first verifying server-side configurations or network dependencies. This is professionally unsound as it wastes resources and may not address the actual root cause, potentially leading to recurring issues. It also risks introducing further instability if the underlying problem is systemic. A third incorrect approach would be to modify security policies on the endpoint or profile storage to force redirection, without understanding the implications. This is a direct regulatory and ethical failure, as it could inadvertently grant unauthorized access to sensitive data or expose the environment to malware, violating data privacy regulations and internal security policies. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such implementation challenges by following a structured problem-solving methodology. This typically involves 1. Incident identification and logging. Clearly document the issue and its impact. 2. Diagnosis. Systematically investigate potential causes, starting with the most probable and least disruptive. 3. Solution design and testing. Develop and test potential solutions in a controlled environment. 4. Implementation. Deploy the solution with proper change management procedures. 5. Verification and closure. Confirm the issue is resolved and document the resolution. Throughout this process, maintaining a security-first mindset and adhering to all relevant regulatory frameworks and organizational policies is critical. Question 7. Assessment of the most effective strategy for deploying a new virtual desktop image to a large, geographically dispersed user base, considering the need for rapid user onboarding while ensuring system stability and data security. Option A. Deploy the new image to all users and address any reported issues reactively as they arise, without a predefined rollback plan. Option B. Immediately deploy the new image to all users simultaneously to meet the urgent onboarding demand, assuming the image has undergone basic functional testing. Option C. Implement a phased rollout of the new image, starting with a pilot group of users, followed by incremental deployments to larger segments, with continuous monitoring and validation at each stage, and a clearly defined rollback procedure. Option D. Deploy the new image to a small group of users, and upon receiving positive feedback from that group, proceed with a full deployment without further comprehensive testing or validation across different user profiles. The correct answer is C. Implement a phased rollout of the new image, starting with a pilot group of users, followed by incremental deployments to larger segments, with continuous monitoring and validation at each stage, and a clearly defined rollback procedure. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between rapid deployment needs and the imperative to maintain data integrity and compliance within a virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI. The need for speed in delivering new virtual desktops to a growing user base can tempt administrators to bypass or shortcut critical security and configuration steps. However, the VMware Certified Professional 7 Desktop and Mobility Exam, and by extension, the professional standards it represents, demand a rigorous adherence to best practices that safeguard data and ensure a stable, secure environment. The correct approach, which involves a phased rollout with thorough testing and validation at each stage, represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the core principles of VDI deployment: stability, security, and user experience. This methodical process allows for the identification and remediation of potential issues before they impact a larger user base, minimizing downtime and security vulnerabilities. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, this approach demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to providing a reliable and secure service, aligning with the implicit expectation of professional responsibility in IT operations. It proactively mitigates risks that could lead to data breaches, service disruptions, or non-compliance with any applicable data handling policies, even if not explicitly codified in a specific jurisdiction for this exam context. The principles of responsible IT management are universal. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over thoroughness, such as deploying a new image without adequate testing in a representative user environment, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses critical validation steps, increasing the likelihood of introducing bugs, security flaws, or performance issues that could compromise user data or disrupt business operations. Such an action could be construed as negligent, failing to uphold the professional duty of care to users and the organization. Another incorrect approach, deploying a new image without a rollback plan, is equally problematic. This demonstrates a lack of foresight and preparedness, leaving the organization vulnerable to extended downtime and data loss if the new image proves unstable. This failure to plan for contingencies is a direct contravention of professional IT management standards. Finally, deploying a new image without considering user impact, such as performance degradation or application compatibility, shows a disregard for the end-user experience and operational efficiency, which can indirectly lead to compliance issues if user productivity is significantly impacted. The professional reasoning process for navigating such a scenario should involve a risk-based assessment. Before any deployment, a thorough evaluation of potential impacts, including security, performance, and user experience, must be conducted. This should be followed by the development of a detailed deployment plan that includes phased rollouts, comprehensive testing protocols, and robust rollback strategies. Communication with stakeholders, including end users and management, is also crucial to manage expectations and gather feedback. The decision-making framework should prioritize stability and security over expediency, recognizing that short-term gains from rapid deployment can be overshadowed by long-term costs associated with instability and security breaches. Question 8. Comparative studies suggest that organizations implementing desktop virtualization solutions often face challenges in maintaining consistent user environments and ensuring data compliance across geographically dispersed remote users. Considering the need to adhere to U.S. federal data privacy and security regulations, which of the following implementation strategies for VMware Horizon 7 best balances user experience with regulatory adherence for sensitive user data? Option A. Deploying full virtual machine clones for each user, with all user data stored locally on the persistent virtual disk and relying on individual user backups. Option B. Utilizing linked clones with a robust user environment management solution to centralize user profile data and settings, while keeping the base image standardized and patched. Option C. Implementing a single, large, persistent virtual disk for all users, shared across multiple virtual desktops with minimal access controls. Option D. Deploying non-persistent desktops with all user data stored directly on the user's local endpoint device, with no central data management. The correct answer is A. Deploying full virtual machine clones for each user, with all user data stored locally on the persistent virtual disk, and relying on individual user backups. Explanation. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in desktop virtualization, ensuring consistent user experience and data integrity across a distributed workforce while adhering to stringent data protection regulations. The professional challenge lies in balancing the flexibility of remote access with the security and compliance requirements mandated by the VMware Certified Professional 7 desktop and mobility exams assumed jurisdiction, which for this exam is U.S. federal regulations pertaining to data privacy and security, such as HIPAA for healthcare data or NIST guidelines for general federal systems. The correct approach involves leveraging VMware Horizon's built-in capabilities for image management and user profile handling in a way that minimizes data sprawl and maximizes control, specifically using linked clones with persona management or UEM, user environment management. Solutions allows for a standardized golden image while preserving user-specific data and settings. This approach is best professional practice because it directly addresses regulatory requirements for data segregation, auditability, and data loss prevention. By keeping user data separate from the base image and centrally managed, it simplifies patching, updates, and disaster recovery, all critical components of a compliant IT infrastructure. Furthermore, it allows for granular control over data access and retention policies, aligning with data privacy principles. An incorrect approach might involve using full virtual machine clones for each user. This is professionally unacceptable from a regulatory standpoint because it leads to significant data duplication, making it exponentially harder to track, secure, and delete user data upon request, which is a key tenet of data privacy regulations. It also increases the attack surface and complicates patching and compliance audits. Another incorrect approach could be to store all user data directly on the virtual desktop's persistent disk without any central management or backup strategy. This is a regulatory failure as it creates a single point of failure for sensitive data, making it vulnerable to loss, corruption, or unauthorized access, and failing to meet data retention and availability requirements. Finally, neglecting to implement robust access controls and encryption for user data, even with a technically sound image management strategy, would be a direct violation of data security mandates, exposing sensitive information and leading to severe compliance penalties. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the regulatory landscape applicable to the data being handled. This includes identifying specific compliance obligations, e.g., HIPAA, GDPR if applicable to U.S. operations NIST. Next, evaluate the technical capabilities of the chosen virtualization platform, VMware Horizon, against these requirements. Prioritize solutions that offer centralized management, granular control, auditability, and data segregation. Always consider the lifecycle of user data, from creation to archival and deletion, and ensure the chosen implementation supports these processes compliantly. Regular security audits and compliance checks are essential to maintain adherence to evolving regulations. Question 9. Strategic planning requires a proactive approach to maintaining optimal performance and security within a VMware Horizon environment. A recent surge in user complaints regarding slow application responsiveness and intermittent login delays has been reported across multiple departments. The IT team has observed increased CPU utilization on the connection servers and a slight increase in network latency during peak hours. The organization operates under strict data handling policies that mandate robust security measures for all endpoints. Which of the following approaches best addresses this implementation challenge while adhering to professional best practices and organizational policies? Option A. Immediately upgrade the hardware resources of the connection servers and network infrastructure to accommodate the perceived increased load, assuming that resource scarcity is the primary cause. Option B. Focus on optimizing individual user profiles and application installations on each virtual desktop, as this is often the cause of performance degradation in VDI environments. Option C. Conduct a thorough analysis of application performance metrics, network traffic patterns, and user session data to pinpoint specific resource bottlenecks or configuration issues, and then implement targeted optimizations or adjustments. Option D. Temporarily disable certain security features on the connection servers and virtual desktops to reduce overhead and improve perceived performance, with the intention of re-enabling them later. Correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough analysis of application performance metrics, network traffic patterns, and user session data to pinpoint specific resource bottlenecks or configuration issues, and then implement targeted optimizations or adjustments. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in desktop virtualization environments, balancing user experience with resource utilization and security compliance. The professional challenge lies in identifying the root cause of performance degradation and ensuring that the chosen solution aligns with the organization's security policies and regulatory obligations, which in the context of the 2V0-751 exam implies adherence to VMware best practices and general IT governance principles. Careful judgment is required to avoid implementing a quick fix that could introduce new vulnerabilities or negatively impact other users. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven investigation. By analyzing performance metrics and user feedback, it allows for the identification of specific bottlenecks, whether they are related to application behavior, network latency, or underlying infrastructure. This methodical approach ensures that the solution addresses the actual problem, rather than a symptom, and minimizes the risk of unintended consequences. It aligns with the principle of least privilege and efficient resource allocation, which are fundamental to maintaining a stable and secure virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on increasing hardware resources without proper diagnosis is professionally unacceptable. This is because it represents a shotgun approach that can be costly and may not even resolve the issue if the bottleneck lies elsewhere. Ethically, it can be seen as a waste of organizational resources. Another incorrect approach that involves disabling security features to improve performance is a direct violation of IT security best practices and potentially regulatory compliance requirements, as it exposes the organization to significant risks. This demonstrates a failure to understand the interconnectedness of performance, security, and compliance. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the problem, gathering relevant data, analyzing potential causes, evaluating solutions based on their effectiveness, efficiency, and security implications, and finally, implementing and monitoring the chosen solution. This iterative process ensures that decisions are informed, justifiable, and aligned with organizational objectives and ethical responsibilities. Question 10. To address the challenge of diagnosing intermittent performance issues within a VMware Horizon VDI environment that appear to be user-specific, what is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach to gathering diagnostic data? Option A. Rely solely on aggregated system performance metrics, assuming that user-specific issues will be reflected in overall trends without delving into individual user data. Option B. Request that affected users manually document their activities and system states during the performance issues and then analyze these self-reported logs. Option C. Implement a system-wide diagnostic logging policy that captures detailed user activity and system interactions, anonymizing the data before analysis to protect individual privacy. Option D. Directly access individual user sessions and their associated data logs without prior notification or consent to identify the root cause of the performance degradation. The correct answer is C. Implement a system-wide diagnostic logging policy that captures detailed user activity and system interactions, anonymizing the data before analysis to protect individual privacy. Explanation. The scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to maintain data privacy and security within a virtual desktop infrastructure (VDI) environment, specifically concerning the handling of sensitive user data. The core of the dilemma lies in balancing the need for effective troubleshooting and system monitoring with the imperative to protect user confidentiality and comply with relevant data protection regulations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any data accessed or processed for diagnostic purposes is anonymized, aggregated, or handled with explicit consent and minimal intrusion. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes user privacy and regulatory compliance. By implementing anonymization techniques and obtaining explicit consent for any direct access to user data, IT professionals uphold their ethical duty to protect sensitive information. This aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, which are fundamental to data protection frameworks. Furthermore, it fosters trust between the organization and its users, reinforcing a culture of responsible data stewardship. An incorrect approach that involves direct, unfettered access to user data for troubleshooting, without anonymization or consent, constitutes a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action violates the principle of data privacy, potentially exposing sensitive personal information and leading to breaches of confidentiality. Such a practice could contravene data protection laws, resulting in severe penalties, reputational damage, and loss of user trust. Another incorrect approach, which involves ignoring the potential privacy implications of diagnostic data collection altogether, demonstrates a lack of due diligence and an abdication of responsibility. This oversight can lead to unintentional data exposure and noncompliance with regulatory requirements. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the potential ethical and regulatory implications of any proposed action. This involves understanding the nature of the data involved, the purpose of its access, and the potential risks to user privacy. Subsequently, professionals should explore all available technical solutions that minimize data exposure, such as anonymization, aggregation, or pseudonymization. If direct access is unavoidable, obtaining informed consent and adhering to strict data handling protocols are paramount. Regular review of policies and procedures, coupled with ongoing training on data privacy best practices, are essential components of responsible IT management. Question 11. Governance review demonstrates that the organization is planning to deploy VMware Horizon to provide virtual desktops to its employees. The IT team is tasked with configuring the deployment. The organization has a comprehensive acceptable use policy, AUP, that outlines acceptable and unacceptable uses of company IT resources, and it operates under a framework of data privacy regulations that mandate the protection of sensitive information. The IT team is considering different approaches to configuring the Horizon environment, which approach best aligns with the organization's governance and compliance obligations. Option A. Proceed with the Horizon deployment as planned, assuming that the virtual desktop environment inherently provides sufficient security and that the existing AUP and data privacy regulations will be adequately met without specific configuration adjustments. Option B. Configure the Horizon environment to strictly adhere to the organization's acceptable use policy and relevant data privacy regulations, conducting a thorough risk assessment to inform specific configuration settings that balance security, compliance, and user productivity. Option C. Implement the Horizon environment with minimal configuration changes, prioritizing ease of deployment and immediate user access to applications, with the understanding that security and policy adherence can be addressed through post-deployment training. Option D. Deploy the Horizon environment with a highly restrictive set of configurations, limiting access to all non-essential applications and external websites to proactively prevent any potential misuse, even if it impacts user workflow. Correct answer is B. Configure the Horizon environment to strictly adhere to the organization's acceptable use policy and relevant data privacy regulations, conducting a thorough risk assessment to inform specific configuration settings that balance security, compliance, and user productivity. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise desktop and mobility management, balancing user productivity and access to necessary applications with the organization's security posture and compliance requirements. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying the organization's acceptable use policy (OP) and relevant data privacy regulations to a specific technical solution. A misinterpretation or misapplication can lead to security vulnerabilities, compliance breaches, or user dissatisfaction, impacting both operational efficiency and legal standing. The need for a clear, documented, and justifiable decision-making process is paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the organization's acceptable use policy (OP) and relevant data privacy regulations, followed by a risk assessment of the proposed VMware Horizon deployment. This approach is best professional practice because it directly addresses the core requirements of governance and compliance. By understanding the defined boundaries of acceptable use and the legal obligations regarding data handling, the IT team can make an informed decision about the scope and configuration of the virtual desktop environment. This ensures that the deployment aligns with established organizational policies and legal frameworks, minimizing the risk of security incidents and regulatory penalties. The risk assessment specifically evaluates how the proposed solution might impact the organization's ability to meet these requirements, leading to a technically sound and compliant implementation. Correct approach is analysis. Implementing the solution without a clear understanding of the AUP and relevant regulations represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses the fundamental governance principles that dictate how IT resources should be managed and used. It creates an environment where unauthorized or inappropriate use of virtual desktops could occur, potentially leading to data breaches or misuse of company assets, which would violate the spirit and letter of the AUP. Deploying the solution with a focus solely on user convenience, disregarding the AUP and data privacy implications, is another critical failure. This prioritizes immediate user satisfaction over long-term security and compliance, which is professionally irresponsible. It exposes the organization to risks such as unauthorized access to sensitive data, noncompliance with data protection laws, e.g., GDPR if applicable though not specified here. The principle applies universally to data privacy regulations, and potential reputational damage. Adopting a highly restrictive configuration that cripples user productivity without a clear justification based on the AUP or risk assessment is also problematic. While security is important, overrestriction can lead to workarounds that are less secure than a well-managed, appropriately configured environment. This approach fails to demonstrate a balanced understanding of organizational needs and risks, potentially leading to user frustration and a decline in productivity, which is not a sustainable or professionally sound IT strategy. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic approach to technology deployment. This begins with understanding the organizational context, its policies, regulations, and business objectives. When evaluating a new technology like VMware Horizon, the process should involve 1. Policy and regulatory review, thoroughly understanding all applicable internal policies like the AUP and external regulations. 2. Risk assessment, identifying potential risks associated with the technology and its proposed use, specifically in relation to the reviewed policies and regulations. 3. Solution design and configuration, designing the technical solution to mitigate identified risks and ensure compliance. 4. Documentation and justification, clearly documenting the decision-making process, the rationale behind configuration choices, and how they align with policies and regulations. 5. Ongoing monitoring and auditing, regularly reviewing the deployed solution to ensure continued compliance and effectiveness. This structured approach ensures that technology decisions are not only technically sound, but also ethically responsible and legally compliant. Question 12. Quality control measures reveal that a significant number of user sessions on VMware Horizon virtual desktops are experiencing intermittent performance degradation, impacting productivity. To diagnose the root cause, the IT team proposes analyzing detailed session logs that contain user activity, application usage, and network traffic patterns. However, these logs, by default, capture personally identifiable information, PI, related to user actions and system interactions. What is the most appropriate course of action to address the performance issues while adhering to data privacy principles? Option A. Configure the logging system to capture only high-level system metrics and discard all detailed user activity and network traffic data, even if it means potentially missing critical diagnostic information for performance issues. Option B. Implement data anonymization or pseudonymization techniques on the session logs before analysis, ensuring that PII is removed or masked to protect user privacy while still allowing for performance diagnostics. Option C. Proceed with the analysis of raw session logs containing PII, assuming that internal IT access is implicitly permitted for troubleshooting purposes and that the benefits of performance improvement outweigh privacy concerns. Option D. Halt all performance optimization efforts until a comprehensive, legally vetted policy for handling user data and performance logs can be developed and implemented, which could take an extended period. The correct answer is B. Implement data anonymization or pseudonymization techniques on the session logs before analysis, ensuring that PII is removed or masked to protect user privacy while still allowing for performance diagnostics. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential conflict between maintaining system performance and adhering to data privacy regulations. The core of the dilemma lies in balancing the need for efficient resource allocation in a virtual desktop environment with the legal and ethical obligations to protect sensitive user data. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any optimization efforts do not inadvertently compromise the confidentiality or integrity of this data. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes compliance with data protection laws. By anonymizing or pseudonymizing data before it is used for performance analysis, the organization upholds its commitment to user privacy and avoids potential legal repercussions. This proactive measure demonstrates a commitment to ethical data handling and aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, which are fundamental to many data privacy frameworks. An incorrect approach that involves analyzing raw, identifiable user data without explicit consent or a clear legal basis for doing so constitutes a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could violate data protection regulations by exposing sensitive information, leading to breaches of confidentiality and trust. Another incorrect approach, such as delaying necessary performance optimizations indefinitely due to privacy concerns, might be well-intentioned but ultimately detrimental to user experience and operational efficiency, potentially leading to system instability and user dissatisfaction, which can indirectly impact compliance by creating an environment where shortcuts are taken. A third incorrect approach, which involves implementing broad data retention policies for performance logs that include identifiable user information beyond what is strictly necessary, also poses a risk of unauthorized access and potential breaches, failing to adhere to data minimization principles. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying all relevant regulatory requirements and ethical considerations. This should be followed by an assessment of the potential risks and benefits associated with each proposed course of action. Prioritizing solutions that achieve technical objectives while demonstrably safeguarding data privacy and complying with legal mandates is crucial. When in doubt, seeking legal counsel or consulting with a data protection officer is a prudent step to ensure all actions are compliant and ethically sound. Question 13. Benchmark analysis indicates a consistent decline in user experience and application responsiveness within the VMware desktop and mobility environment. The IT team has observed increased latency during peak usage hours, impacting productivity. The goal is to optimize the environment to restore optimal performance and user satisfaction. Option A. Apply a widely available, generic VDI optimization script to all virtual desktops to quickly resolve performance issues. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive performance analysis of the virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI, including resource utilization, network traffic, and application behavior, to identify specific bottlenecks before implementing any changes. Option C. Increase the RAM allocation for all virtual machines by 50% to proactively address potential memory constraints. Option D. Immediately upgrade all virtual desktop hardware and software components to the latest versions to ensure maximum performance and compatibility. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive performance analysis of the virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI, including resource utilization, network traffic, and application behavior, to identify specific bottlenecks before implementing any changes. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT environments where performance metrics reveal inefficiencies. The professional is tasked with improving process optimization within a VMware desktop and mobility deployment. The challenge lies in identifying the root cause of the performance degradation and implementing solutions that are not only technically sound, but also align with the specific regulatory framework governing the exam's jurisdiction. Without a clear understanding of the underlying issues, a hasty implementation of a generic solution could lead to further complications, increased costs, and potential noncompliance. The need for a systematic, data-driven approach is paramount to ensure effective and compliant optimization. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough, multifaceted investigation that begins with detailed performance monitoring and analysis. This includes examining resource utilization, CPU, memory, disk I/O, network, application response times, and user experience metrics. Based on this data, specific bottlenecks can be identified. The subsequent steps should involve targeted remediation, such as optimizing VM configurations, refining application delivery mechanisms, or adjusting network settings. This data-driven, iterative process ensures that optimizations are focused on actual problems, minimizing disruption and maximizing efficiency. This aligns with best professional practices by prioritizing evidence-based decision-making and a systematic approach to problem-solving, which are implicitly expected within any regulated professional environment. While the exam does not specify a particular jurisdiction's explicit regulations for this scenario, the principle of due diligence and responsible IT management, which underpins most professional IT certifications, dictates this methodical approach. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing a broad, system-wide upgrade of all virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI, components without prior analysis is a regulatory and ethical failure. This approach is wasteful, potentially disruptive, and does not address the specific root cause of any identified performance issues. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to apply professional judgment based on evidence. Such an action could be seen as a breach of professional responsibility to manage resources effectively and efficiently. Focusing solely on increasing the allocated RAM to all virtual machines without understanding current memory utilization patterns is another failure. This is an example of a reactive, unsubstantiated change that could lead to resource contention and increased licensing costs without a guaranteed performance improvement. It bypasses the critical step of identifying actual resource bottlenecks, which is a core tenet of professional IT optimization. Adopting a set-it-and-forget-it approach by applying a generic optimization script downloaded from an unverified online source is a significant regulatory and ethical risk. This demonstrates a disregard for the specific environment, potential security vulnerabilities introduced by untrusted scripts, and a failure to adhere to established best practices for change management and system integrity. It exposes the organization to potential system instability and security breaches, which are unacceptable in any professional context. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach process optimization by first establishing a baseline through comprehensive monitoring and data collection. This data should then be analyzed to pinpoint specific areas of inefficiency. Solutions should be designed to address these identified bottlenecks with a clear plan for implementation, testing, and validation. A phased rollout and continuous monitoring are crucial to ensure that optimizations are effective and do not introduce new problems. This systematic, evidence-based approach ensures accountability, minimizes risk, and demonstrates professional competence and adherence to responsible IT management principles. Question 14. Consider a scenario where a company is experiencing slow login times and application responsiveness issues across its VMware Horizon virtual desktop environment. The IT team is tasked with optimizing processes to improve user experience and operational efficiency. Which of the following strategies would best address these challenges while adhering to professional best practices for managing virtual desktop infrastructure? Option A. Immediately implement a broad reduction in allocated CPU and RAM for all virtual desktops to conserve resources, assuming this will resolve performance issues. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive analysis of resource utilization patterns, user session data, and application performance metrics to identify specific bottlenecks, followed by targeted adjustments to resource allocation, profile management, and network configuration, with subsequent validation of improvements. Option C. Deploy a new, unproven third-party optimization tool across the entire environment without prior testing or risk assessment. Option D. Focus solely on increasing storage IOPS without investigating other potential performance inhibitors, such as network latency or application inefficiencies. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive analysis of resource utilization patterns, user session data, and application performance metrics to identify specific bottlenecks, followed by targeted adjustments to resource allocation, profile management, and network configurations, with subsequent validation of improvements. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in IT environments, balancing the need for efficient resource utilization with the imperative to maintain a secure and compliant desktop and mobility infrastructure. The professional challenge lies in identifying and implementing process optimizations that enhance performance and user experience without compromising data integrity, regulatory adherence, or introducing new security vulnerabilities. Careful judgment is required to select solutions that are not only technically sound, but also align with the specific requirements of the VMware Certified Professional 7 Desktop and Mobility Exam scope, which implicitly governs the best practices for managing virtual desktop and mobile environments. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and data-driven methodology for process optimization. This involves understanding the current state, identifying bottlenecks through analysis, and then implementing targeted changes with measurable outcomes. This aligns with the principles of continuous improvement and IT governance, ensuring that optimizations are effective, sustainable, and do not introduce unintended consequences. In the context of desktop and mobility management, this translates to ensuring that user productivity is enhanced, operational costs are managed, and the overall stability and security of the virtualized environment are maintained, all within the operational parameters expected by the VMware certification. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on reducing resource consumption, without considering the impact on user experience or application performance, would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to degraded user productivity, increased support calls, and potential non-compliance with service-level agreements. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing changes without proper testing or validation risks introducing instability, security vulnerabilities, or compatibility issues within the virtual desktop infrastructure. This violates the principle of due diligence and could lead to significant operational disruptions and potential data breaches, which are critical failures in a professional IT context. A third incorrect approach that bypasses established change management procedures introduces an element of chaos and unpredictability into the environment, increasing the likelihood of errors and making it difficult to troubleshoot issues, thereby undermining the overall reliability and security of the deployed solutions. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the current environment and business objectives. This involves gathering data, analyzing performance metrics, and identifying areas for improvement. Subsequently, potential solutions should be evaluated based on their feasibility, impact, and alignment with best practices and any relevant compliance requirements. Pilot testing and phased rollouts are crucial steps to mitigate risks. Finally, continuous monitoring and feedback loops are essential to ensure that optimizations are effective and to identify further opportunities for improvement. This iterative process ensures that optimizations are not only technically sound, but also strategically aligned with organizational goals and operational realities. Question 15. The investigation demonstrates that a significant number of users are experiencing prolonged logon times and intermittent application unresponsiveness within a VMware Horizon 7 environment. The IT team is considering several strategies to address these performance degradations. Which of the following strategies is the most appropriate and professionally sound approach to optimize the process and resolve these issues? Option A. Disable non-essential VMware Horizon services and features, such as certain monitoring agents or background processes, across the entire VDI infrastructure to reduce overall resource consumption. Option B. Systematically analyze performance metrics, including user logon duration, application launch times, and resource utilization, CPU memory disk I/O, across various user groups and workloads, to identify specific bottlenecks before implementing targeted adjustments to vSphere resource allocation, Horizon agent configurations, or Unified Endpoint Management (UEM) policies. Option C. Immediately increase the allocated CPU and RAM for all virtual desktops to their maximum permissible limits to ensure ample resources are available for all user activities, regardless of actual demand. Option D. Roll back to a previous, known stable version of the VMware Horizon environment and all associated components, without conducting any performance analysis or identifying the root cause of the current issues. The correct answer is B. Systematically analyze performance metrics, including user logon duration, application launch times, and resource utilization, CPU memory disk I/O, across various user groups and workloads, to identify specific bottlenecks before implementing targeted adjustments to vSphere resource allocation, Horizon agent configurations, or Unified Endpoint Management (UEM) policies. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a common challenge in virtual desktop infrastructure (VDI) environments, balancing performance optimization with resource utilization and user experience. The scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a deep understanding of how various VMware Horizon components interact and how changes in one area can have cascading effects on others. Hasty or poorly considered optimization can lead to degraded performance, increased costs, or even service disruptions, all of which have direct implications for business operations and user productivity. Adhering to the principles of process optimization within the VMware Certified Professional 7 Desktop and Mobility Exam 2V0-751 framework means prioritizing solutions that are efficient, scalable, and maintainable, while also considering the end-user experience and the underlying infrastructure's capabilities. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it focuses on a systematic and data-driven method for identifying and addressing performance bottlenecks. By analyzing specific metrics related to user logon times, application responsiveness, and resource consumption, CPU, memory, disk I/O, across different user groups and workloads, it allows for targeted interventions. This aligns with the exam's emphasis on understanding how to optimize the user experience and operational efficiency of VMware Horizon deployments. Implementing changes based on observed data, such as adjusting vSphere resource allocation, optimizing Horizon agent settings, or refining UEM policies, ensures that optimizations are effective and do not introduce new problems. This methodical approach minimizes risk and maximizes the likelihood of achieving desired performance improvements without negatively impacting other aspects of the VDI environment. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on increasing the allocated CPU or RAM for all virtual desktops without prior analysis is professionally unacceptable. This is because it represents a brute force method that is likely to be inefficient and costly, fails to identify the root cause of any performance issues, and can lead to overprovisioning of resources, driving up hardware and licensing costs unnecessarily. Furthermore, it ignores the potential for other factors, such as network latency, storage performance, or application inefficiencies, to be the primary drivers of poor performance. This approach lacks the analytical rigor expected of a VCP and can be seen as a failure to adhere to best practices in resource management and cost optimization, which are implicit in the exam's objectives. Another incorrect approach that involves disabling essential VMware Horizon features or services to reduce resource overhead is also professionally unsound. While some services might have a minor impact, disabling critical components can lead to unexpected behavior, loss of functionality, and security vulnerabilities. This approach demonstrates a lack of understanding of how these features contribute to the overall VDI solution and their importance for user experience and manageability. It prioritizes a perceived reduction in resource usage over the integrity and functionality of the deployed solution, which is a direct contravention of professional responsibility and the principles of robust system design. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Define the problem clearly, what specific performance issues are being observed. 2. Gather data, collect relevant metrics from VMware Horizon vSphere and potentially end-user devices. 3. Analyze the data, identify patterns, correlations, and potential root causes. 4. Formulate hypotheses. Based on the analysis, propose potential solutions. 5. Test solutions. Implement changes in a controlled environment or on a subset of users. 6. Measure results. Evaluate the impact of the changes against the defined problem. 7. Document findings. Record the process, results, and any lessons learned. This iterative process ensures that optimizations are effective, efficient, and aligned with business objectives and user needs. Question 16. Upon reviewing user reports of intermittent slowness and application unresponsiveness within a VMware Horizon View environment, a VCPDTM certified administrator suspects a performance bottleneck. The environment consists of numerous link-clone virtual desktops and several published applications running on virtual machines. The administrator needs to efficiently diagnose and resolve the issue while minimizing disruption to end users. Option A. Immediately initiate a reboot of all virtual desktops and published application servers to clear any potential transient issues. Option B. Systematically analyze performance metrics from vCenter Server, including CPU, memory, disk I/O, and network utilization for both the virtual desktops and the underlying hosts, correlating these with the reported slowness times. Option C. Contact the storage vendor to schedule a firmware update for the SAN array, assuming the storage is the most likely culprit for performance degradation. Option D. Advise users to close unnecessary applications on their virtual desktops and to restart their individual virtual machines to alleviate the problem. The correct answer is B. Systematically analyze performance metrics from vCenter Server, including CPU, memory, disk I/O, and network utilization for both the virtual desktops and the underlying hosts, correlating these with the reported slowness times. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT environments where performance bottlenecks can impact user productivity and potentially violate service level agreements, SLAs, if not addressed efficiently. The core of the challenge lies in identifying the root cause of performance degradation without disrupting ongoing operations or introducing new risks. Careful judgment is required to balance the urgency of the issue with the need for thorough investigation and adherence to established IT governance and operational procedures. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven investigation. By leveraging VMware's built-in performance monitoring tools and logs, the administrator can gather objective evidence of resource utilization and identify specific VMs or processes contributing to the slowdown. This aligns with the principles of ITIL, Information Technology Infrastructure Library, or similar IT service management frameworks, which emphasize incident management, problem management, and the use of diagnostic tools for effective troubleshooting. Furthermore, it adheres to the principle of least privilege and change control by avoiding unauthorized modifications. An incorrect approach that involves randomly rebooting virtual machines is professionally unacceptable. This action constitutes a significant operational risk, as it can lead to data loss, corruption, or service interruption for users of the rebooted VMs, potentially violating SLAs and causing business disruption. It bypasses proper incident management procedures and lacks any diagnostic basis, making it a reactive and potentially harmful solution. Another incorrect approach, such as immediately escalating to hardware replacement without proper diagnosis, is also professionally unsound. This premature escalation incurs unnecessary costs and diverts resources from potentially simpler software or configuration-related issues. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence in troubleshooting and can erode confidence in the IT team's ability to resolve issues efficiently. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Acknowledge and document the reported issue. 2. Gather initial information from the reporter and monitoring systems. 3. Utilize diagnostic tools to collect performance metrics and logs from the affected environment. 4. Analyze the collected data to identify potential root causes. 5. Formulate a hypothesis and test it through controlled changes or further investigation. 6. Implement solutions following change control procedures. 7. Verify the resolution and document the findings. 8. Escalate only when internal diagnostic capabilities are exhausted or when the issue clearly points to external factors. Question 17. The assessment process reveals that the project team is under significant pressure to deploy a new virtual desktop environment to a large user base within a tight deadline. To meet this deadline, the team is considering deploying a single, standardized desktop image to all users immediately, bypassing a planned pilot testing phase with a diverse group of users, and a thorough security configuration review. What is the most professionally sound approach to manage this situation? Option A. Implement the standardized image for the majority of users and then create custom images for specific departments that report issues to expedite the initial rollout. Option B. Proceed with the immediate deployment of the standardized image to meet the deadline, with the understanding that any issues will be addressed reactively as they arise. Option C. Focus on deploying the most cost-effective image solution first, deferring any advanced security configurations or user-specific customizations until after the initial deployment. Option D. Advocate for a phased rollout, starting with a pilot group representing different user roles and departments to identify and resolve potential issues before a full deployment, while ensuring security configurations are validated at each stage. The correct answer is D. Advocate for a phased rollout, starting with a pilot group representing different user roles and departments to identify and resolve potential issues before a full deployment, while ensuring security configurations are validated at each stage. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in desktop virtualization projects, balancing the need for rapid deployment with the imperative to adhere to established security and compliance mandates. In this scenario, the project manager is under pressure to deliver a functional virtual desktop environment quickly, which can lead to shortcuts that compromise long-term stability and security. The core of the challenge lies in understanding the implications of different deployment strategies on user experience, resource utilization, and crucially, the adherence to the VMware Certified Professional 7 desktop and mobility exams implied regulatory and best practice framework, which emphasizes security, performance, and manageability. The correct approach, which involves a phased rollout with thorough testing and user feedback integration, represents best professional practice because it aligns with a risk mitigation strategy. This method allows for the identification and correction of issues before widespread deployment, minimizing disruption and ensuring that the final solution meets both technical and user requirements. It also implicitly supports compliance by allowing for security and policy checks at each stage. This iterative process is crucial for maintaining a stable and secure virtual desktop infrastructure, which is a cornerstone of professional IT management. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over thoroughness, such as deploying a single, uncustomized image to all users without pilot testing, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses critical validation steps, potentially introducing security vulnerabilities or performance bottlenecks that could impact the entire user base. It also fails to consider the diverse needs of different user groups, leading to a suboptimal user experience and potential noncompliance with accessibility or specific application requirements. Furthermore, deploying without adequate testing can lead to costly remediation efforts and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on the lowest cost of implementation without considering long-term operational overhead or security implications, is also professionally unacceptable. This often leads to under-provisioned resources, inadequate security controls, and a lack of scalability, all of which can result in increased support costs, security breaches, and a failure to meet business objectives. This approach neglects the broader responsibilities of an IT professional to deliver a sustainable and secure solution. The professional reasoning process for making decisions in such situations should involve a structured risk assessment. This includes identifying potential technical, security, and user experience risks associated with each deployment strategy. The project manager should then evaluate these risks against the project's objectives and constraints, prioritizing solutions that offer the best balance of speed, security, cost-effectiveness, and user satisfaction. Engaging stakeholders, including end users and security teams, throughout the process is vital for gathering necessary input and ensuring buy-in. A phased approach, incorporating feedback loops and continuous monitoring, is generally the most robust and professionally sound method for deploying complex IT solutions like virtual desktop environments. Question 18. Examination of the data shows that a new feature in VMware Horizon 7 is available that promises to significantly enhance user experience for graphics-intensive applications. The IT department is eager to deploy this feature to a large user base to improve productivity. However, preliminary internal security assessments indicate a potential, though not fully understood, vulnerability related to data caching within this new feature. What is the most appropriate course of action for the IT team to ensure both the successful adoption of the new feature and adherence to organizational security policies and best practices? Option A. Proceed with a phased rollout of the new feature, starting with a small pilot group of users, while simultaneously conducting in-depth security testing and developing mitigation strategies for any identified vulnerabilities. Option B. Deploy the new feature to all users, but instruct them to avoid using it for applications that handle sensitive data until further notice. Option C. Immediately deploy the new feature to all users to capitalize on the promised productivity gains, assuming the potential vulnerability is minor and unlikely to be exploited. Option D. Delay the deployment of the new feature indefinitely until the potential vulnerability is completely understood and a perfect, risk-free solution is developed. The correct answer is A. Proceed with a phased rollout of the new feature, starting with a small pilot group of users, while simultaneously conducting in-depth security testing and developing mitigation strategies for any identified vulnerabilities. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid deployment of new technology and the need to maintain a secure and compliant end-user computing environment. The VMware Certified Professional 7 Desktop and Mobility Exam focuses on the practical application of VMware technologies within an organizational context, which necessitates understanding the implications of these deployments on data security and user experience, all within the bounds of relevant regulatory frameworks. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, risk-based methodology for evaluating and implementing new desktop virtualization features. This aligns with the principles of responsible IT governance, which mandate thorough testing and validation for widespread adoption. Specifically, it ensures that any potential security vulnerabilities or performance degradations are identified and mitigated, thereby protecting sensitive organizational data and maintaining user productivity. This proactive stance is crucial for adhering to data protection regulations and internal security policies, which often require demonstrable due diligence in the deployment of new technologies. An incorrect approach that bypasses thorough testing and validation before a broad rollout would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Such an approach could lead to the inadvertent exposure of sensitive data, violating data privacy regulations, and potentially incurring substantial fines and reputational damage. It also fails to uphold the ethical responsibility to provide a stable and secure computing environment for end users. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on the perceived benefits of a feature without considering its security implications or potential impact on existing infrastructure, demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the organization's overall risk posture. This can lead to compliance breaches and operational disruptions. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the business and technical requirements for any new feature. This should be followed by a comprehensive risk assessment, including security, performance, and compliance considerations. A phased rollout strategy involving pilot testing with a representative user group is essential to identify and address any unforeseen issues. Continuous monitoring and feedback mechanisms should be in place throughout the deployment process to ensure ongoing stability and security. Question 19. Performance analysis shows a consistent degradation in application responsiveness for several virtual machines hosted on a VMware vSphere environment. Users are reporting slow load times and intermittent application freezes. The IT team is tasked with resolving this issue promptly. Option A. Initiate a project to migrate the affected virtual machines to an alternative virtualization platform to bypass the perceived limitations of the current environment. Option B. Focus troubleshooting efforts exclusively on network latency and implement network-level optimizations to address the application responsiveness problem. Option C. Conduct a thorough performance analysis using vSphere performance monitoring tools to identify specific resource bottlenecks, CPU, memory, storage, network, impacting the affected virtual machines before proposing any remediation steps. Option D. Immediately increase the vCPU allocation for all virtual machines experiencing performance issues to ensure they have sufficient processing power. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough performance analysis using vSphere performance monitoring tools to identify specific resource bottlenecks, CPU, memory, storage, network, impacting the affected virtual machines before proposing any remediation steps. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in IT environments, balancing performance optimization with resource allocation and potential licensing implications. The core difficulty lies in identifying the root cause of performance degradation without inadvertently violating licensing agreements or introducing new security vulnerabilities. A hasty decision based on incomplete information could lead to significant financial penalties, operational disruptions, and a breach of compliance. The need for a structured, evidence-based approach is paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic investigation that prioritizes understanding the current state before implementing changes. This aligns with best practices for IT service management and VMware's own recommended operational procedures. Specifically, it emphasizes data collection and analysis using native VMware tools like vRealize operations or vCenter performance charts to pinpoint the exact cause of the performance issues. This data-driven methodology ensures that any proposed solution is targeted, effective, and minimizes unintended consequences. It also implicitly supports compliance by ensuring that resource utilization is understood and managed within the scope of existing agreements. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a broad-stroke solution like increasing vCPU allocation across all affected virtual machines without prior analysis is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach risks violating VMware licensing terms, which are often based on the number of physical CPU cores or sockets, or specific vCPU to physical core ratios. Such a violation could lead to substantial financial penalties and legal repercussions. Furthermore, indiscriminately increasing vCPUs can negatively impact host performance by increasing scheduling overhead and contention, exacerbating the original problem or creating new ones. It also bypasses the professional obligation to diagnose before prescribing. Another incorrect approach is to immediately consider migrating workloads to a different platform without a thorough investigation of the current environment. This is premature and potentially wasteful. It ignores the possibility that the performance issues are addressable within the existing VMware infrastructure. This approach fails to demonstrate due diligence and could lead to unnecessary expenditure and operational disruption, potentially violating cost management principles and the duty to provide efficient IT services. Finally, focusing solely on network latency as the cause without considering other potential bottlenecks, CPU, memory, storage, is an incomplete diagnostic approach. While network issues can impact performance, attributing the problem solely to this factor without comprehensive analysis is unprofessional and likely to lead to an ineffective solution. This demonstrates a failure to apply a holistic troubleshooting methodology, which is a cornerstone of professional IT practice and essential for maintaining service integrity. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with clear problem definition, followed by data gathering and analysis. This involves utilizing available diagnostic tools to understand the symptoms and identify potential root causes. Once potential causes are identified, solutions should be evaluated based on their effectiveness, feasibility, cost, and importantly, their compliance with relevant licensing agreements and regulatory requirements. The process should involve a feedback loop, where implemented solutions are monitored to ensure they resolve the issue without introducing new problems. This iterative, data-driven, and compliance-aware approach is essential for responsible IT management. Question 20. Governance review demonstrates a planned deployment of VMware Horizon to enhance desktop virtualization capabilities. Before proceeding, what is the most critical step to ensure a secure, stable, and compliant end-user computing environment? Option A. Immediately initiate the deployment to leverage the anticipated performance improvements as soon as possible. Option B. Perform a basic technical compatibility check of the core components without evaluating broader operational or user impacts. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to identify and mitigate potential risks to infrastructure, security, and user experience. Option D. Rely solely on the vendor's documentation and assurances regarding compatibility and security. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to identify and mitigate potential risks to infrastructure, security, and user experience. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT governance where a new technology deployment, while offering potential benefits, introduces significant risks that must be carefully managed. The professional challenge lies in balancing the drive for innovation and efficiency with the imperative to maintain a secure, compliant, and stable end-user computing environment. A thorough impact assessment is critical to identify, evaluate, and plan for these risks before implementation. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that systematically evaluates the potential effects of the VMware Horizon deployment on existing infrastructure, security posture, user experience, and operational processes. This includes identifying all affected systems, data flows, and user groups, assessing the severity and likelihood of potential negative impacts, and developing mitigation strategies. This aligns with best practices in IT governance and risk management, ensuring that decisions are data-driven and that potential disruptions are minimized. Regulatory compliance, while not explicitly detailed in the prompt for this exam's jurisdiction, implicitly requires a proactive approach to security and operational integrity, which a thorough impact assessment directly supports. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the deployment without a formal impact assessment. This represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it demonstrates a disregard for due diligence and risk management principles. It exposes the organization to potential security breaches, data loss, service disruptions, and non-compliance with internal policies and potentially external mandates. Even if not explicitly stated for this exam's jurisdiction, the principle of responsible IT deployment is universal. Another incorrect approach is to conduct a superficial assessment that only considers the technical aspects of the deployment, neglecting the crucial impact on users and business processes. This failure stems from an incomplete understanding of the holistic impact, leading to unforeseen operational issues and user dissatisfaction, which can indirectly lead to compliance or security gaps. Finally, relying solely on vendor claims without independent verification of compatibility and security implications is also professionally unsound, as it abdicates responsibility for risk assessment and could lead to the adoption of a solution that is not fit for purpose or introduces unacceptable vulnerabilities. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This begins with identifying the proposed change, then systematically identifying potential risks and impacts across technical, security, operational, and user domains. Each identified risk should be analyzed for its likelihood and potential severity. Based on this analysis, mitigation strategies should be developed and prioritized. The decision to proceed, delay, or abandon the deployment should be based on the residual risk after mitigation. This iterative process ensures that technology adoption is aligned with business objectives and risk tolerance.